It's great to be here, and welcome to the Getting Ready for Work in the Next Future session. I think the pandemic has undoubtedly accelerated digital transformation. It's redefining the workplace. And as we consider the next future of work, will the jobs that we know now still exist a few years down the road when we consider how the changes are coming? What kind of skills will we need in this digital world? And with working from home becoming the new work arrangement for many people, how might this be affecting productivity? Might burnout be a concern? And what effects might there be on mental health now and into the future? So to look at these and a number of other fascinating issues, I'm delighted to welcome our three panelists this afternoon. We have Megan Stokes, who's the Senior Principal Consultant, Transformation and Knowledge Management at Sud, Asia Pacific. We also have Ms. Crystal Tang, who's Consultant, Wellness and Partnerships at Mercer Marsh Benefits. We also have Nicole Jasinski-Singh, who's the Managing Director of Kill and Pest. So I'd like to invite up first Megan to talk to us, and just to introduce Megan's background to you a little bit more. So Megan is Senior Principal Consultant, Transformation and Knowledge Management at Sud Asia Pacific. She's responsible for internal digital service and client-facing transformation, supporting all aspects of organizational change management and knowledge management. And previously, as Director of Quality, Governance and Assurance IT at Singtel, she worked on a focused transformation program, creating and launching a quality management system, process governance, solution delivery methodology, and a knowledge management framework. She has nearly 30 years experience in program knowledge, change management, and transformation. And Megan has shared with us that she's a leader who's focused on enabling people to reach their full potential. And she's a champion of her domain, intent on growing organizational capability in collaboration with partners and knowledge sharing. So we're really delighted to have Megan with us today to take us through the first presentation. And we'll be taking questions from yourselves towards the end of the three sessions. So Megan, can I possibly hand over to you?
And get started. Thank you all for joining us today. Hopefully that's all clear and my screen's up and running. So getting ready for work in the new future. Lots and lots to discuss today. First off, just like to start with a bit of an overview of Sud in numbers. So we're a one-stop technical solution provider with 150 years of experience in safety, security and sustainability business, with 1,000+ locations worldwide and our 24,500 employees. But let's get into the talk today. We've all seen these headlines and articles and reports over the last 3 to 5 years. By 2030, it's estimated that between 75 and 375 million people will need reskilling and upskilling in order to meet the demands of the new changing jobs we're facing, all due to automation. Of course, currently, we're seeing these headlines. According to market research company Forrester, the COVID-19 crisis, like other global shocks before it, will accelerate automation plans. We also know automation is more quickly adopted during these economic downturns. And where jobs were lost in those times, we've seen the recovery occur mostly in middle skill routine jobs. And this is due to the increased effectiveness and investment in automation technology. And frankly, I think it's believed that the aftermath of COVID-19 will be no different. So whilst there are companies out there that had invested in automation and they're now reaping the benefits of doing so, there are many others that are still trying to cope with the IT, security and HR demands of one of the big implications of COVID-19, a remote workforce. One of the biggest impacts to employees and employers of this crisis has been the wide-reaching change to work from home. In general, the more digitized a company's processes are, the simpler it is for them to collaborate remotely. So what does all of this mean for the new future of work? Well, a huge 98% of people surveyed said they would like the option to continue to work remotely for the rest of their careers. In our own office, we did a survey. 50% said they preferred working from home and 41% were neutral. And when we asked about returning to the office, flying all over the place there. And when we asked about returning to the office, 75% of them said that they would like to work between 50 and 80% from home in the future. And the benefits that they reported were around flexible schedule, the ability to work from any location, and no more commuting. But like all changes, there are challenges to the work from home scenario. So for our remote workers, nearly a quarter in surveys have issues unplugging from work when their work day is done. The biggest struggle we see is there's this blurred line between work and personal life, and taking vacations when everybody knows you're not going anywhere. Loneliness. 20% state this is a real struggle while working remotely. Of course, we're all now familiar with how hard it can be to stay motivated when we're working from home and away from the office, and the distractions at home. There's always something to catch your eye. Nearly 25% face challenges with collaborating or communicating in this new way of working. And we see this struggle with communication in another survey that I've seen, where 26% agree or strongly agree that they have difficulty with tough conversations, flagging concerns. They feel more intimidated trying to do this when they're working remotely than in person. Now, as managers, as leaders, and even as peers, we need to be aware of this. Is someone who normally would speak up being quiet? And do we need to make sure we're really truly hearing the voice of all those that we need to? Of course, there's remote managers. The biggest concern for the managers of remote workers is 82% of them are concerned about reduced focus and reduced productivity in their teams. 3/4 are concerned about team cohesiveness and what this does to their ability to achieve goals. 70% are focused on maintaining the company culture, and something we know grows and thrives with each interaction you have, even if it's only just making a cup of coffee in the lunchroom. We also see concern for burnout and overwork, and we're going to talk about that again later on this afternoon. And finally, career implications. Again, in a survey, people are concerned, nearly a third, that they aren't being understood or their manager is not fully understanding the extent of the contribution, and that this could in some way affect their career trajectory. And we need to remember, for managers, they're in this incredibly difficult position that they are not only having to take care of their remote workers and consider their teams, but they're also often remote working themselves and dealing with those individual issues. So we have a lot going on and we have a lot changing around us. So what do leaders need to consider in this future of work? How we go about working with our managers, supervisors, and our workforce going forward needs some key considerations. And first and foremost, we must have an environment of trust. Open and transparent communication, including active listening, a really difficult thing in Zoom meetings or even when you're just doing one-on-ones from remote. It's vital to building trust. And this, of course, links to morale. Team loyalty and morale dissipates really quickly when employees feel that their manager isn't being honest with them or is maybe not giving them all the information. So it's really important that when you're communicating, you do it clearly and regularly. And you talk about what, why, when, and any impacts of what you're communicating to the team. You then need to monitor how your workforce is responding and what is exactly happening to morale. Not an easy thing to do, again, when some of your team could be in the office, some of your team could be working from home, and you could be in either. Next consideration is reskilling and upskilling. Now, whether this is due to work from home, you might have sales teams who need to be retrained on how to do sales calls over Zoom or over calls as opposed to face-to-face, or if you're reskilling for an automation or a digital transformation. Making sure that you're focused on building the right skills for the future is incredibly important. I don't think I have to talk too much about this one. The lifeblood of any organisation. Productivity must be a priority, even in these difficult times or when people are unsure as to what's expected of them. Flexibility and adaptability are both vital components to create successful work from home activities and any automation strategy that works. And finally, we really need to be considering respect, and this links back to that environment of trust. Demonstrating respect and understanding of someone's circumstances can go a really long way to resolving issues, reducing friction during these times of stress and change, and ultimately building trust. So this here, what do leaders need to consider for the future of working from home? And there is a lot, and that's what we need to be really cognizant of. There are lots and lots of things we need to consider about what's going on around us at the moment. So this list is to stimulate your thinking, whether it's the future of work from home in your organisation or the future of work. Technology. We've all had to rapidly adjust to technology for remote working, but what other things can you do or can you introduce into your particular environment to help the current situation and maintain productivity? Talent identification. There are still a big focus on making sure that you are rewarding, recognising, and obviously identifying the talent as people continue to move throughout their lives. Promotions. Another point. Depending on how long people continue to work from home or remotely, you are still going to need to undertake promotions. Are you sure that you're getting a full view of what resources are doing and those people that are ready for or looking for promotions? Key skill identification. Again, whether it's for upskilling or whether it's for making sure that you are continuing to support the learning and growing of all those in your organisation, how do you make sure that you are focusing them in the right direction during these turbulent times? Performance management and rewards. I'm sorry to say, no longer is the once a year key performance indicator set and forget scenario going to work. People need more acknowledgement, they need more regular feedback, and they need to hear how you think they're doing on a more regular basis when they're not able to interact with you physically. And this, of course, is often going to lead to making sure that that feedback is reflected in their rewards and their any performance bonuses you need to consider. So you need to be really thinking about that. Recruitment. Frankly, remote hiring has actually been on the upward trend for quite some time. I'm sure we've all seen video interviews and we've all had the opportunity to sort of bring people on board through that. But have you thought about remote onboarding? We had 4 new starters in our team this week, and I'm wondering, how did they feel not being able to make eye contact and meet new people as they normally would coming on board? And how will that affect both their expectations and also the culture that they see around my team and the organisation? Leadership skills. Always vital to be considering, but under current circumstances, what ideas and skills and tips can you give to your leaders, or as a leader can you seek out to make sure that you are able to deal with these circumstances that we've just talked about, all these new things based on remote working, particularly distance coaching? And finally, focus on output rather than hours in the office. This is quite a confrontational thing for some people. We've had for a very long time the expectation that you come into the office, you do the long hours, you're seen, the boss can tell what you're doing, see when you're at your desk. All of this is now changing, and we need to be aware of how everyone is responding and how it will continue to change. Some questions for you to consider. Critical roles in your organisation. Do you have the right people in these critical roles? Do you have people ready to step in or step up to these critical roles? How about collaboration when you are handing out new activities or considering the goals of a team? You may need to think about changing, for example, the cadence of project meetings. Once a week or once a fortnight may not be enough to actually truly collaborate and achieve the goals you need to. And then finally, how can you adjust, whether you're a supervisor, a leader, a manager, or an individual, to make sure that you're adapting to the changes that are coming and that you're able to ensure the success of your organisation. Finally, employee experience. Now considered on par with customer experience for profit and long-term success, what are you doing to support your workforce? In the office, working remotely, shop front managers or executives during these really volatile times of change? And some considerations for you. Skill shortage is one of the highest issues raised by management and especially HR going forward. And we hear it quite a lot in the times of automation, digitalization, and even at the moment. So when considering the impact of that automation, the hardest activities to automate with the current technology that we have are those that involve managing and developing people with only 9% automation potential, or jobs that reference the expertise of decision making, planning, or creative work, which has an 18% automation potential. So when we think about these areas, which are very unlikely to be automated in the immediate or near future, what are the skills we need to be looking at? Now, you need to obviously consider your own digitalization strategy and the future of your workforce and what is appropriate to your circumstances. Particularly during these intense times of change, these are some of the skills that I believe we need to focus on. Now, we all hear it said often and regularly. Ongoing lifelong learning is a key skill we need to embrace and encourage in those around us. Creativity and innovation, key human attributes for the most part that are actually really difficult to automate. Considered vital to face the volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous world that we live in today. Emotional intelligence quotient, and this is self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, social skills. It's thought to be one of the great indicators of future success. It's very important during these times, particularly where we may be not able to meet physically, where we need to read and monitor what's going on with ourselves and what's going on with those around us. Of course, analytical thinking and problem solving, vital in any role of the future. A growth mindset, focusing on agility and adaptability. This is the ability to continually improve so that you can be great at anything when you put your mind to it. It also means looking out for the latest trends and innovations that can help you be and perform better. Judgment and decision making. And this is where having those critical thinking skills allows you to ascertain the problem, come up with a solution that is beneficial to the company and its employees, and actually make a decision. Strong decision making is incredibly important in building trust and in gaining buy-in so that you can go forward with achieving your goals. Interpersonal communication skills, vital when facing challenges. Effective communication, and I do highlight that, effective communication, including active listening, is incredibly important. Leadership skills, we talk about this all the time. It's about being inspiring and helping others. It's decision making, it's public speaking, it's delegation, it's how to take ownership of the task at hand. And this doesn't matter whether you're a manager, a supervisor or not. Leadership skills are vital to your future success. Diversity and cultural intelligence. Skills to understand, respect and work with others despite differences in race, culture, political or religious beliefs. And technology skills, couldn't leave those off. And subject to your organisation's needs and the individual's interest and capacity, we need to be looking at data analytics, robotics, RPA, programming, cybersecurity, and even automated machine learning skills for your business experts to upskill them and take over some of these tasks. My personal favourite, change. I believe one of the most important skills we can teach and role model is the ability to embrace change and really learn to thrive. Because as we hear often enough, the only consistent is change. So consider this, with the half-life of a skill having dropped from 30 years to an average of 6 years, whether you're focusing on others as a manager or leader, or focusing on yourself, we need to really focus on continuous learning, growing, and embracing the new future of work, no matter where it takes us. I hope that has inspired you and sparked some thoughts. I know that's a lot, and we will be providing copies of the pack so you can have a look, and always please reach out and contact me, and hopefully that's also sparked a lot of questions for our panel. So thank you very much. Thank you for listening, and I will hand back to Michael.
Megan, thank you. Thank you very much indeed. That was really fascinating. Lots of insights, some terrific statistics for us to, really get our teeth into. A lot of food for thought. So thank you very much indeed for getting us off to such a good start. I just wanted to mention a couple of things that you mentioned that I think comes for this aspect of trust and morale is so important right now. More encouragement and more feedback, letting people know how they're doing, recognizing that we've got this skills shortage to sort of deal with as well.
Yeah.
And I also thought your point about critical roles as well was very, very interesting, something that we will talk about in a bit more detail later. And I know last but not least, you're the same as me, embracing change. I think that's a really great one to finish your presentation on. So once again, thank you so much for getting us off to such a good start.
Great.
Thanks, Megan.
Thanks.
Thank you. So we now have the opportunity to move to our next speaker. And I'm delighted to be able to give you a little bit of background about Crystal Tang. So Crystal Tang is a consultant right now in wellness and partnerships with Mercer Benefits. And she's been within the health consulting and has 7 years of experience in wealth benefits. She currently specializes in wellness consulting and partnerships, where she designs wellness solutions for clients, as well as managing partnerships to match clients with support that delivers results. And as a wellness consultant, she's passionate about the education of mental wellness in the corporate sector, as well as a very strong advocate for women's health and wellness. Before joining Mercer, Crystal was in mental health consulting in the United States and in Singapore. So a major area of her work included being a spokesperson for mental health at local and regional health conferences, giving talks and facilitating workshops for employees on topics ranging from stress management to women's health issues. She was once an on-site crisis support consultant to large tech companies such as Twitter. Now, besides her corporate work in her clinical practice, Crystal has delivered cognitive behavioral therapy and solutions-focused therapy to adult and adolescent clients with a wide range of emotional, behavioral, and adjustment problems such as anxiety, stress, depression, and relationship problems. So we're switching here a little bit to look at we're looking at some really interesting subject matter here with Crystal. So I will just hand over to Crystal now.
Thank you, Michael, for the introduction. So I'll just be sharing my screen here. Okay. So thanks for the introduction, Michael. And just a little bit about me before I start. As Michael said, I'm a consultant with Mercer Marsh & Benefit. So I do a lot of consulting for wellness solutions. And if clients need any wellness solutions, especially during this time, COVID, and a little bit post-COVID now that we're moving forward to new future of work, we have different types of solutions that we think that will actually help you guys moving to this new future where everyone's working remotely. So without further ado, today I'm just going to talk a little bit about how the changes that are in the workforce now due to COVID-19, how we're going to deal with those changes, how we're actually adapting to those changes, how employers are adapting to those changes, how is the changes affecting the workforce now, and why is it really, really important to be not only mentally, physically resilient, but we need to also be financially and professionally resilient as well. And last but not least, I will go through how actually we're moving from a traditional point of view in terms of wellness solutions to now a more digital point of view. So let's start with how are we actually responding effectively to the outbreak so far. Mercer has actually done a digital focus group early this year in April, and we found that about 3 out of 5 said that outbreak hasn't impacted their confidence in the future of the organization, which is a good thing. And a lot of employees are finding that, constant communication with the flexible working arrangements from their senior management has helped them actually adapt a lot better to working from home. And as Megan was saying that, working from home has a lot of disruptions. We have distraction from family members, children running around. There's no break between work and home life now, because what you see in front of you is your laptop all the time. A lot of employees are not actually taking time off, and they said even if we take time off, where are we going to go? So there's no point taking time off, right? So there lies the problem or the issues about how our employers actually responding to the outbreak so far. But from the digital focus group, we've seen that a lot of employees are actually really happy that the company or the employers are actually responding superbly well. We have had a lot of employers ask us, how do we support employees now during this outbreak? What kind of solutions can we put in place? We all know that productivity is a key factor. We don't know whether employees are actually producing, or are they feeling okay working from home? Is their work environment suitable for them from home? When do we go back to work? When do we go back to the office, and things like that? So this this digital focus group has given us a lot of insight into what are the different challenges for the employers and for the employees. So moving forward, the question would be, what should you focus on now? The 3 key things that we think that employers should be focusing on now is the regular and transparent communications between you and your employee, or between the manager and your team. So, the continuous sharing of business continuity plans, even short-term measures, even little things as, hey, let's catch up for team meetings this week, or should it be once a week? Should it be daily? It's really up to the manager or the organization. We've seen that, that constant communication from the manager or from senior management about what the organization is doing, what they have put in place, what the plans are for the future has actually really helped employees feel more secure, more confident in their organization, and they actually do their work a lot more effectively or efficiently because they know that, hey, my manager's taking care of me, or my senior management does look out for me, the organization does look out for not only my work, but also my personal well-being. So personal well-being is a very big thing that we have seen when employees are giving feedback as to how they feel in during this time during the pandemic working from home. An organization that gives a little bit more wellness solutions in terms of providing some webinars, providing some mental health support, has seen employees grow or produce a lot better or effectively and much more happier in an organization versus an organization who left the employee to work from home and still follow the same type of KPIs or the same type of same type of process that they were doing back at the office. So the next thing we also saw that when employers actually involve digital tools innovation into their new remote working lifestyle has really helped solve a lot of challenges. Later I'll be speaking a little bit on what the whole change from traditional to digital actually looks like and what current employers are actually offering to the employees right now. The last thing, the third key thing actually is actually empathy and listening. So a lot of organizations before the pandemic, they did like a checklist. Oh, if I need physical help for the organization, like physical health focus areas, or we go through the different wellness areas of physical, financial, mental health, and we just do a checklist without actually asking what the employees need, doesn't actually really help. So with focus on really listening to what the employees need by having digital focus groups, different surveys that employers have been doing, giving out to employees, like really short ones, or having vendors actually, come in and maybe share on different types of offerings or different types of webinars on health and even financial help or financial support, has given employees a way of thinking, hey, my employer is really listening to me. I do have all these needs besides, meeting workload, but I do have other needs that I need for my family. How do I separate work and home life when I have children to take care of and they weren't going to school? So that was how these three key points that we think organizations should be focusing on now moving forward in the new way of work. Just now, when Megan was also talking about managers, we also feel like managers are the front line of the outbreak. We have seen a lot of case studies looking at managers who weren't supportive versus managers who were supportive. And managers who were supportive knew how to manage their priorities, had really regular conversations with their team members, and really were very flexible with how they manage their team members. For example, we had an employer or an organization who had very supportive managers where they had regular one-on-ones with their team members when they usually never had that at the office. And then because of remote working, they said, what, let's do a Zoom call every week. Let's make sure that we catch up with you, make sure that you're doing well, make sure that I'm not only asking about work, I'm asking you about your mental well-being, your physical well-being. Are you exercising? Are you eating well? Are you sleeping well? And helping the employee manage their priorities if they have families, helping employees actually deal with the new remote working life if they are isolated, meaning they live on their own. They weren't, with doing the whole lockdown, weren't able to see friends or meet up with, have social groups. A lot of the single people who didn't have families here or didn't have any support were actually really realizing that isolation played a huge role on their mental health. So having a manager, having regular conversations or even team meetings each week really helped those individuals to kind of feel connected again. So managers, just be as supportive as you can when your team member needs you. Managing your priorities as a manager is also important for yourself. That means taking care of your own mental and physical well-being as well, because if you don't take care of your own self, then you really can't support your team members as well. The other thing we also found is that when the team was a major source of support, it really helped employees feel less stress. So before I worked in Mercer, I was a clinical psychologist, and one of the things that we know in research is that the thing that really supports someone through stress is not the nutrition diet that we have. It's not because of how much webinars you've attended or books you've read on how to manage stress. It's mostly social support. That's the main factor to actually buffer you against going into a chronic stress cycle. So we've seen that during this whole pandemic, more than a third of participants said their teammates were the only ones that were supporting them during this outbreak were really helpful for them, because without the teammates, without their managers supporting them, everyone's going to feel very isolated. Working from home has made everyone feel like, am I working silo? The project, we're all working on a project, but I'm doing my own thing, my team members doing their own thing. Without, constant communication with each other, we're not going to know, how each other is doing. I always tell, my teammates or even employees, like, hey, call your teammate, not because you are calling them for work, but ask them how they're feeling. How are they doing? Would you like to have a coffee chat over Zoom, each week? I always feel that always helps. I also have, it always helps to have, Zoom meetings when you're not talking about work. And I know a lot of times Zoom meetings equates it to work, but let's also now equate Zoom meetings to catching up with a colleague, catching up with my manager. Building good relationship with each other is one thing that we can do during this pandemic or during this whole new shape of work. We're not seeing each other physically anymore, or less at least right now, but we need to stay connected, because staying connected is the largest buffer to stress that you're feeling. Now moving forward, let me go into what are the different needs and what are different solutions that we now can provide as employer to the employees. There's always been that 4 pillars of well-being we all know: physical well-being, emotional well-being, financial well-being, and social connectivity. Now, maybe just a quick second to think about, what have you guys been doing in your organization in terms of looking after your employees' physical well-being, emotional, financial, and social connectivity? Has it been very traditional in terms of just providing seminars, providing webinars, providing maybe employee assistance program, or not providing anything, or just giving employees resource to find something by themselves, and maybe you have a flexible account that they can claim for it? So what are the ways that what are you doing for your employees? Something to think about. So what we have found during this pandemic, the biggest thing that has hit employers is mental health. Mental health has been such a huge issue right now. During COVID-19 and the lockdown, especially in Singapore, if you read Straits Times and you read CNA, they see that, later I'll show you, the rise of burnout symptoms have been rising, even though everyone thinks that working from home should be easy, right? I have the sofa there, I'll just go sit down and relax and not care about the laptop. But it's actually contrary. With the laptop right in front of them all the time, we've seen that employees actually don't have breaks. They rather finish, complete projects after projects, emails after emails. They don't actually take breaks, right? So mental health has actually, been a crisis during the pandemic, even now during phase 2, even though people are going out and having, coffee breaks with their friends or colleagues, not people are still feeling very overwhelmed. People are going out, but not all, but those who are a bit afraid or don't want to, also they don't really go out as well. So there has been an impact to businesses, for psychological, physical, and also impact on financial and businesses in terms of people having higher claims, medical costs. There is employee turnover and hiring and rehiring, and also we know that there's a high rate of redundancy going on right now. So mental health has been the biggest impact during this pandemic that we have seen. And in Singapore itself, there has been like a very, very huge percentage of people saying that they cannot separate work and life. 61%, based on a study by Blind Singapore, said that they cannot manage their workload, which is a huge percentage. They cannot manage their workload. They don't find that separation between work and life. And then, as you can see, there's a huge percentage, concern about workload, concern about lack of support from management, and of course, I said no separation between work and life has been the largest cause of burnout rates rising. So, what can be done? Now, the other question also I wanted to ask you guys is, do you know what burnout is? How do you know when someone is burning out? As a manager yourself, HR yourself, how do you know, even for yourself, how do you know when you are burning out? So these are the symptoms that I would say you have to look out for. And these are not the symptoms I put. It's actually, the symptoms is actually classified with the WHO as a disease recently. And is you feeling like energy has been depleted, you're creating a lot of distance from yourself, from people around you, from your job, what you found to be passionate about. Say you were very passionate about your job and suddenly you just feel like there's lack of passion. There has been no breaks between work and home life. So basically you're working 14, 15, 16 hours a day, maybe only 10 minutes of lunch break, 10 minutes of dinner break, and that's it. And you just keep working. Slowly, you're going to face the burnout symptom, and you're going to face that reduced professional efficacy. So as you can see on the right hand side, this is how it looks like. So this is something that you can actually have on hand once after this whole webinar is done. When you get the PDF, you can actually see do you have any of these symptoms actually? Do you have rage? Are you facing mental, physical tiredness? Are you having, are you feeling like you're putting a lot of hard work, but there's no reward from the organization, or having excessive expectations on yourself? And most of the time, employees have that about themselves without actually the managers giving that to them. So it's a funny thing to see that during this whole pandemic, the employees are feeling a lot of giving themselves the expectations to finish their project on time, to finish the project at a certain time, because they don't have that separation between work and home life anymore. And just to follow up on the impact of all these, from burnout symptoms to mental health declination, is it costs the company money, costs the company disengagement, and of course a high turnover rate. So what have we been doing, knowing when all these things are happening to organizations or to our clients? Usually, we tell organizations, you need to build the people in your organization. The people are the foundation of your organization. So without them being resilient, without them knowing what to do or giving them resources to actually seek out support, you're not going to have a resilient organization. So we feel like, resilient organizations are made of three things: the employee listening, knowing what they need, knowing what you need to provide, or knowing what solutions that you can have out there for them, giving them the best environment for yourself and for the employees and for everyone. Right? Having clear communications, having clear, events on what's going to happen, provide the upskilling for the employees as well. That's also really important. So employees feel like, hey, I've been listened to. There's always my organization's always providing me resources, even for my career, to upskill myself, and also providing me an environment where they care about me. Even though I'm remote working, even though I'm in a remote working culture right now, organizations can say, hey, are you doing okay? Do you have any musculoskeletal issues? Can we provide something to help you with working from home, make you feel more comfortable? All these small little things that organizations do for the employees make up more resilient people, because they do trust the organization more to take care of them. So let's move on to the next portion. I want to show you what we have done also this year, what we call the health and demand study. So we wanted to see how, organizations can actually move from traditional solutions to more digital solutions, and wanted to see whether there will be a greater uptick to digital solutions from moving forward in the new age of work. A lot of decision makers say, about 50%, that this will be a greater priority in the organizations in the future. Two-thirds of the workers are actually open to having digital solutions in place for, or trying them out in the organization, right? And also 75%, say that they do trust the employee's ability to protect their personal info, even everything is going digital or online. So we see that a lot of employers are willing, and employees are willing to actually try digital solutions more than, and change from having a traditional point of view, a traditional way of thinking in wellness solutions to more digital solutions. So as you can see, on the left-hand side, what are the traditional solutions? I think everyone knows that traditional solutions can be employee assistance program, meaning picking up the phone, calling the counselor to seek counseling on issues such as personal or work issues, having on-site classes or seminars before COVID, when we used to have like vendors come in, provide on-site classes or seminars on nutrition, on health screening, even doing traditional health screening exercises at their office, going to traditional clinics. Those are all traditional ways of doing things. Now, since COVID-19 and the pandemic, we're all moving digital. So you may ask me, Crystal, what are digital solutions? So how do I provide that for my employees? That's a good question, because now we have a lot more vendors now, even locally, that provide digital mental health solutions through apps. No longer are we needing to call the counselor. You can go on the app, click on a schedule appointment, and talk to a live counselor or psychologist, and everything can be done at the comfort of your own home. We even have access to classes online, and this is not YouTube. These are really like classes headed by top tier trainers around the world, and they provide classes online to employees through the app or through a web platform that employees can access. And these are classes like yoga, meditation, nutrition, cooking classes, everything that can be done online. We have moved everything to digital solution that way. The other one is also telemedicine. I'm sure you guys are pretty aware that, telemedicine has grown a lot, shot up a lot in terms of utilization uptake during COVID-19. And telemedicine is now taking over in terms of going to traditional clinics to see a doctor. We have seen a lot of employees just wanting to pick up the phone and, do a video consult with a doctor instead of going to the clinic and exposing themselves to a very sick person beside them. So telemedicine has also seen an uptake for that. So this is what we have seen from what is the shift from traditional to digital. I want to talk a little, just very quickly, on how you can see the differences between having a traditional employee assistance program versus having digital mental health solutions. So right now, like I said, they're changing from having counseling sessions over the phone and in person to everything online to an app. We even have now changing from traditional only getting utilization reports, but no data on mental health. Now we have data on mental health based on getting brain health reports from an individual, getting brain health reports sent to an HR to see an aggregate score and how their employees are all doing at home. Are they, producing well? Is there something we need to look at from this? assessment scores, everything can be tracked now, everything can be, you know, to show you like, hey, you know, is my organization or my team's doing well at home? Do I need to support them? And if they need support, can they, you know, can they actually dial in or actually use an app to call a counselor in less than 2 minutes, which is now we're able to, versus a traditional employee assistance program, they needed to wait 3 to 5 business days to see a counselor. Now you can actually access the counselor through an app within 2 minutes or within actually 1 business day due to scheduling. So this has been changed, and this is something that maybe you can think about implementing, and this is something that now we can have in Singapore, a landscape of mental health data, because we have new resources for that. I just wanted to show you what companies or different clients have been doing in terms of changing the whole wellness solutions and wellness plans in their company during COVID and even right now. They have actually changed for the physical point of view. They have used, you know, the vendor for video classes with top certified teachers. We have even eye health screening can be done digitally. We have a vendor, we had introduced a lot of our clients vendors on eye health screening that can be done mobile. That means they can come to the house, do the screening for the employee and the family, and give them prescription eyeglasses on the spot, or even within a few business days when they order it. So that is all changed. And for mental health, we have, you know, a brain health vendor that actually provides counseling and provides brain health reports and assessments. And also, you know, for financially, you know, there's webinars on financial planning, will writing, even providing like virtual clinics for people who need financial help. So these are the things that a lot of the clients that we've seen are moving forward into. Now I want to talk in summary for SMEs to see what other different tips that you can actually help your employees right now before I end the session. Is think about flexible working hours. Like I said, you know, having an employer, giving them that flexible adaptive working hours really helps with stress management. You know, host wellness webinars, maybe once a month, every 2 weeks. That really helps give employees tips and resources on who to seek help on, where do I seek support. If I need, you know, if I really am stressed, you know, at least I have a wellness, you know, I attended that wellness webinar and I had that resource, I know who to go to. Consider an EAP hotline if you don't have one. If you want to start on something that's not digital yet and you want to go on a traditional way of doing, I would say consider an EAP hotline. It has helped a lot of employees during this pandemic when they were stuck at home to actually call and have someone to talk to who is local. They're not based anywhere else. Most of the counselors are local, so they can talk to someone about how they're feeling, how do they manage home and work life, how do they manage stress, how do they manage workload that they feel very overwhelmed with. And that's something that has helped a lot of employees find that they were referring to employees to the EAP, and they help the employees kind of seek that support without them falling into a negative cycle, and then after that it would be too late to help them. And last but not least is to review your benefits, your wellness benefits, insurance benefits, see what you can have in place. We're more than happy to help you out with that as well. See, you know, to see what you have in place. Is there any changes that you need? Are there any things that you would like to add on? We're more than happy to help you with that. So last but not least, before I end my session, these are a few takeaway questions that you can ask yourself. Is it time that you reinvent your whole wellness solutions? Are you only doing a checklist for well-being? That's an important one, because we've seen that if you do the checklist for well-being, you're not really listening to employees, and that's where there's that that conflict between, you know, my employee's not listening to me, I'm not being supported. And last but not least, you know, will well-being be part of your DNA and how you do things around here? So these few takeaway questions that you can ask yourself and what you need to do. Feel free to ask me questions later during the Q&A. I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. Thank you so much for your time, and I will pass this over to Michael.
Crystal, thank you very much indeed. I just wanted to check the sound quality. Can you hear me okay, Crystal? Are you okay You can
Yep,
hear
it's
me?
better now.
It's better now. Okay,
Yes.
good. So apologies for that earlier. Crystal, you were saying about communication being incredibly important at this time. I thought that was one of the biggest takeaways that I got from your presentation. The importance of checking in with people during this very difficult time that we're going through. I also thought that your descriptors of the trend towards digital tools and digital support for the well-being of employees was absolutely fascinating. Particularly noted down the brain aspects of your team that you mentioned, which has prompted a few questions which we can come back to later about confidentiality of that kind of data. I think you mentioned it was aggregated data, but to give you a bit of an idea about how your team is doing. Thank you so much. I think like Megan, a wealth of information in there, some terrific statistics and some really interesting and important pointers to us for how to look after our employees. And I'm looking forward to exploring some of those ideas with you a bit later on. So thank you very much indeed, once again, Crystal. Thank you. Okay, well, next up we have Nicole Jasinski-Singh, who is an entrepreneur in the pest management, cleaning and hygiene sectors. So Nicole is responsible for managing the operations of Killam Pest Private Limited in Singapore and developing the strategic direction of the Killam group of companies, which also have operations in Myanmar and Malaysia as well. So for the past few months, I think this is true, Nicole, your companies have been extremely busy, right, in the fight against coronavirus, but not only coronavirus, also the spread of dengue as well, which we're keenly aware of. So Nicole originally read law at the London School of Economics and qualified as a lawyer here in Singapore. So amongst other things, she is the treasurer of the Singapore Pest Management Association. And it seems that her legal background and involvement in the SPMA are really helping to drive change in the whole pest management industry by raising standards and also professionalizing the sector as well. So it's a real pleasure to have you with us today, Nicole. So looking forward to hearing your presentation, and I'll hand over to you now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Michael. Let me just share my presentation. Can I just check that everyone can see my slides?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you, Carrie. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope that you've been enjoying this virtual conference as much as I have. Thank you very much, SMEICC, for having me today. So thank you for the introduction, Michael. I do represent a very different kind of industry. I'm sure that many of you do not see pest management and cleaning as particularly sexy or glamorous like some of the other industries that we've come across in fintech, biotech, fashion, or travel. Pest management and cleaning are very much traditional industries. So yes, as I was saying, the pest management and cleaning industries are very traditional in the sense that we really rely on human labor. We're not as fast moving and dynamic as perhaps some of the other industries. Indeed, I can say from firsthand experience that until 5 months ago, work from home was a completely alien concept that did not exist for us. Today, it feels like it's been part of our life for years. Nevertheless, I hope that throughout my presentation, you will come to understand the crucial role that we play in getting ready for work in the next future. So Michael has already covered a brief introduction. So Killam Pest was founded more than 27 years ago by my parents. We are very much a locally owned and operated brand here in Singapore. We are a technologically driven and socially conscious business in the sense that our office operations are fully on cloud And as far as possible, we do deploy technology in our pest management treatments. For example, the use of electronic rodent traps in our day-to-day treatment methods. We are conscious of our impact on the environment and do try to offset this by getting involved in community events such as litter picking, tree planting, and recycling within our office. We have more than 100 licensed pest management professionals here in Singapore, thus making us one of the largest local companies in the Singapore market. We serve a whole range of customers, including from the residential, commercial, and government sectors. Some of our notable clients include the NEA, Marina Bay Financial Center, Centrepoint, Nanyang Technological University, and all the SBS buses in Singapore. So briefly about me, I left a career in law to get into the environmental services sector. We have been very busy over the last few years in expanding both internationally as well as diversifying our business into cleaning, hygiene, and disinfection services. So, up until a few months ago, there was a lot of ambiguity, and the term essential service meant different things to different people. Pest management is an essential service. And as such, during the circuit breaker, we were able to continue operations because we were recognized by the Singapore government that we do indeed provide a service that, is needed and necessary in our day-to-day lives. So perhaps you may be wondering, why is pest management an essential service? Firstly, it protects our food sources and food reserves. During this COVID time, our government has increased its food reserves due to supply chain disruptions. The storage facilities holding our nation's food must be protected from pests. Otherwise, food will be contaminated and unfit for consumption. Secondly, pest management protects us against diseases and allergens. Pests carry diseases such as dengue, the Zika virus, and chikungunya. Moreover, pest management also protects our homes and buildings from structural and property damage. When I first started out in the industry about 6 years ago, one of the first sites that I visited was a primary school. When I walked into the gymnasium of this primary school, I was shocked because the entire ceiling in the gym had collapsed. It turned out that the reason for this was because termites had eaten the inside of the wooden ceiling, and as such, the structural beams holding the ceiling in place collapsed. This is not just this didn't result in just huge property damage, but it could have been very dangerous as well had the ceiling collapsed when there were children, doing their exercising in the gym. Finally, pest management protects businesses from economic and reputational damage. No business owner wants to have their restaurant or shopping center or commercial building known as the place with pest activities. I'm sure right now all of you are aware with social media and platforms like Stomp, it's very easy and very quickly for bad news and bad press to spread. So even though we are considered an essential service, there are still many challenges that we have faced during COVID-19. First and foremost is the lack of manpower. Even before the circuit breaker and Singapore's lockdown, many countries were already struggling to get enough people to join the industry and become pest management professionals, who are the technicians that carry out the pest control treatment works. However, in March, when the Malaysian movement control order was announced, overnight, I lost nearly 20% of my workforce. Most of my Malaysian PNPs do the daily commute from Johor into Singapore. At that point, we had no idea that, 5 months later, borders would still be closed, or that borders would be closed only for the most essential business travel. As such, given that we were already, we already had a shortage, or we were struggling with our manpower, we were hit with this whammy of overnight losing 20% of our workforce. On top of that, Singapore, as Michael mentioned, Singapore is battling not just a pandemic, but a deadly disease in the form of dengue. So far, 27 people have died from COVID-19 in Singapore, and 20 people have died from dengue. So far, despite only being in August, we have already surpassed the last record of the number of dengue cases in a single year. On top of that, the symptoms of the coronavirus and dengue can sometimes be mistaken. Indeed, back in February, there were several cases where patients were admitted into the hospital with suspected dengue symptoms, only for them to turn out to have either the coronavirus or both dengue and the coronavirus. So fighting both the coronavirus as well as dengue has also been a challenge for us, because on the one hand, many customers want more services, and we don't have the resources to meet their demand due to this shortage of manpower. On the other hand, many customers are closed and do not want the services. And due to cost-cutting measures, usually pest management is one of the first to go. But obviously we cannot force them to continue with services. We've also been facing increased operating costs. So more PPE is required, hand sanitizers, masks, laptops, mobile phones for the work from home. And our fewer jobs can also be carried out because of the fact that whenever our PMPs go into a site, they have to have their temperature screened, they have to do the check-in, check-out. Many of my foreign colleagues need to go and get a swab test done every 2 weeks. So all of that kind of has impact productivity to an extent. As I've also mentioned, we have experienced, one would think that during this time, there would be a lot of demand, both for pest management as well as disinfection. However, what we have witnessed is that many of the commercial clients, specifically in the F&B sector, construction sites, shopping malls, offices, retail outlets, all of them either paused services during the circuit breaker or asked for reduced services, because their justification for this was that, oh, we're not operating, therefore we don't need your services. Similarly, on the residential side, many customers did not want our PMPs coming to their homes because they were concerned and worried about, that because our PMPs come into contact with different people, they could unknowingly be carrying the virus. Nevertheless, in many ways, we did come out as a success story. Success in the time of the coronavirus does mean different things to different people. Even though I am a very optimistic person, I do think that it is premature to say that we have succeeded, as the coronavirus is far from over. We're still, a good few months before any vaccines would be coming into the Singapore market. Nevertheless, I think that one of the reasons why we have succeeded so far, and that pretty much, as Megan and Crystal have mentioned, is the fact that my employees are all healthy and happy. As I mentioned, my PMPs go to different locations each day and interact with different people. Despite the risks, we have managed to keep them safe and to continue operations in meeting our customers' demand and to protect Singapore both from COVID-19 and dengue. Okay, so some of the things that we have not had to resort to, and this has, obviously, like for my employees, it's job security. So far, we've not done any redundancies. In fact, we are hiring, and we're hiring aggressively. I've not had to implement any pay cuts or reduce work hours. Bonuses for 2019 have been paid in full. And all of my Malaysian employees who had to return to Malaysia when the Malaysian movement control order was implemented, they have been paid as per MOM guidelines. For my office employees as well, I do believe that we have had quite a successful transition to work from home. As an organization, I think for us especially, it's so important that we are compliant with all laws, regulations, and safety measures, because unfortunately, being a very labor-intensive industry, we cannot just have everyone working from home completely, especially my pest management professionals. Moreover, we've not had to rely on any loans or additional funding. So I'm not here to preach or lecture anyone on how to run their business. However, this is what helped me get through during this time. And it is a mix of business strategy, which is kind of a little bit more tangible, as well as human empowerment and that personal touch, which is measured, I guess, more in an intangible way. And at the core of this was the purpose of why we are operating our business, which is, to protect Singapore from COVID-19 and from dengue. So in terms of business strategy, I think you've heard a lot. Technology has been kind of one of the buzzwords during this conference, but it's absolutely true. Without technology, we would have been unable to work from home efficiently and effectively. Everything was moved online within a week, and we started shift work back in March. So we were quite ready by the time the circuit breaker kicked in April. Most of my, as I mentioned, most of my office operations is all done on cloud. We've also utilized some apps like Teams from Microsoft Office, Zoom, and this allowed me to stay in constant communication with my colleagues. Our PMPs were already using an Oracle-based app to manage their schedules, write their service reports, and communicate with the office as well. However, before the circuit breaker, I would say that it was kind of a half-hearted attempt because, as and when there were any issues, it's like, oh, my phone isn't working, like I'm not going to use the app today, or, they could call anytime and someone in the office would be able to assist them. However, when circuit breaker kicked in and when my office was working remotely, my PMPs were forced to utilize this app and its full features. And through this use of the app, we've also been able to get so much data, which has thus enabled us to find out, where we could increase our productivity and efficiency. So even though we were operating with, 20% less manpower, we were still able to accommodate most of our clients' requests and attend and service most of the clients who were still operating during the circuit breaker time. Secondly, diversification. So I mentioned earlier that we provide services to a whole range of customers, and this has saved us in some way, because had we only been, for example, offering pest control services to F&B outlets or hotels, bars, restaurants, we would have been quite badly impacted, especially during the circuit breaker time. But by offering services to, condominiums, construction sites, it was able to tide us over. Secondly, we have also diversified our services. So in Myanmar, one of my core businesses is a cleaning and hygiene services company. So even though cleaning and hygiene is not a major component of what we do here in Singapore, with our experience in this sector, we were very quickly able to start offering disinfection services to our clients from as early as January, when this first mysterious virus appeared, and hygiene and sanitation was shared as one of the main things to prevent the spread of this virus. Finally, I'm sure everyone knows this, but during this time, cash liquidity is king. Wherever we were able to postpone making payments or incurring additional costs for the company, we took that. However, that has not impacted our welfare and our our employee benefits. So in terms of how we were able to kind of empower our colleagues, you've heard a lot about it. Communication is key. We were very transparent, so we did not hide anything about what was happening in the business, what was our revenue like, what customers were saying. At the forefront also was safety. There's nothing more important to me than the safety of my colleagues, especially those carrying out the disinfection works. I made it very clear to them that if at any point they were not comfortable in doing a job, they did not have to do that. We had instances as well where, for example, the office would take a call and, the customer would say that, oh no, there's no COVID-19 case and there's no suspected case. However, when my PMPs went down, it turned out that it was a confirmed case. My PMPs knew that I would rather forego carrying out this job than risk them being unprepared to carry out the job safely. Teamwork is another thing that really kept us going. As Crystal was saying, regularly checking in with each other, helping each other, if someone was struggling, whether it was work or, in their home environment, wherever we could help, we tried. And that's also down to understanding and compassion. We had to set boundaries. I may send out emails at funny hours sometimes, but I never expect my colleagues to be replying at all hours of the night. And, very often I had to tell them, like, look, just because I sent you an email, it doesn't mean that you have to reply at 11 p.m. And finally, we do have, Killam does have a unique company culture, because at our core, we are an SME, we are a family operated business. And as such, our colleagues are like our family and we look out for our family. However, we also operate like a corporation, which allows us to set KPIs, have SOPs, and scale our businesses and grow. So, okay. One of the things that I was also asked to discuss is the evolution of the pest management industry. So we've definitely come a long way in the past few decades. There are currently, the industry, as I've mentioned, is very reliant on human labor as well as on pesticides. Why pesticides? Because it's a relatively low cost solution, and it is quite effective and readily available. However, the future of pest management is going to be very different. There's an emphasis on integrated pest management, which is using a variety of methods to control pests, but at the core, focusing on sustainability rather than the extensive use of pesticides. Technology and automation as well. I've mentioned that we do use electronic rodent traps. There are other tools out there, for example, like remote pest monitoring devices, which allow you to have 24/7 coverage with real-time alerts. This can be applicable for other pests such as flies, cockroaches, and bed bugs. Finally, science. Singapore has pioneered its own Project Wolbachia, which is basically introducing Aedes mosquitoes into the public that carry this bacteria, so that as and when they mate with the females are unable to lay eggs. As a result, over time, the population of mosquitoes should decrease. We've also got, there's also other treatment methods are birth control for birds and rodents. So far it works for humans, so hopefully we can find an effective solution to controlling the rat and pigeon populations as well. So finally, I would like to end with getting ready for work in the next future. So we've talked about many things such as technology, employee welfare, the importance of communication. But one of the things that the coronavirus has also taught us is that one of the best ways to combat the virus is to be fit and healthy. Pest management and disinfection contribute to our health and wellness. Being healthy is one of the most important ways to fight COVID, and workplaces can do this by taking out disinfection services. So before COVID-19, disinfection was carried out mostly at sensitive locations such as hospitals, sensitive manufacturing plants. When the outbreak started, disinfection was commonly carried out at premises with confirmed or suspected cases. Where it's heading under the new norm is that disinfection should be carried out as a preventive measure against not just COVID-19, but other germs and bacteria. In fact, within my own office, since around about end of February, we've been carrying out disinfection on a weekly basis. And that's just as a precaution. What we have noticed, especially over the last month or so, once circuit breaker was lifted and more people were coming back into the office, is the fact that with this regular disinfection and increased cleaning and sanitation of our office, fewer people are getting sick. So I do hope, and I would like to think that that can be attributed to disinfection. So thank you very much for your time and for listening to me. Obviously, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out, and I look forward to the panel discussion. Back to you, Michael.
Nicole, thank you very much indeed. Hopefully you can hear me okay. What an incredibly human story of survival and success during COVID. Nicole, thank you very much for sharing that with us. I was really struck by how important you mentioned purpose was. And I'm kind of wondering whether the fact that you have a purpose of protecting Singapore, keeping people safe, that would be a very powerful purpose, I think, for attracting people into the company, I think. So even though you started your presentation by saying that pest control might not be the most exciting or alluring kind of profession, it is a very meaningful profession because, as you mentioned, food security, property damage protection, and also protecting the reputations of businesses as well, because nobody wants to be associated with pests on the property, as you quite rightly mentioned. So thank you very much indeed for your lovely sharing and balancing the tangible with the intangible. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. So we have the opportunity now to turn to our panel discussion, and we can invite participants to share questions with us. I'm going to get the show on the road by asking our panel's advice on a number of different questions. So let me start first of all. And Megan, is it okay if I come to you with the first question? We have a question here, which is, what do you think the long-term implications are of for big companies who do not adjust their post-COVID-19 employee needs? In other words, what could happen in the future if things are not done now?
Look, I think large organisations and small need to be constantly adjusting, whether it's post-COVID needs, whether it's automation, whether it's whatever next threat is around the corner, environmentally, economically, you know, I think every company needs to be considering how they're going to adjust. Rigid strategies, you know, 5-year plans that are rigidly adhered to, I just don't think they make a whole lot of sense. And I mean, maybe Nicole can sort of comment to that from her perspective, but I certainly think that taking the time to understand what your employees are going through now, taking on board their feedback, you know, running surveys like Crystal mentioned, really listening and communicating effectively with your employees, it's going to make a really big difference to how you structure your strategy going forward. Now, if you don't do that, if you don't listen to your employees, you're probably not listening to your customers, you're probably not listening to your stakeholders, and quite frankly, I don't think any organisation with that sort of approach is going to survive.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that response, Megan. Crystal, just picking up on what Megan said there about communications and really talking to your employees. We had a question, very interesting question, about the enforcement of annual leave. Okay, so I'm sure someone in Nicole's position, particularly, you were talking about the importance of cash flow and the importance of making sure that you keep your costs under control. So it's a very real concern that people have, that if people don't take their annual leave, this accrues as a potential cost that the company will have to make at a certain point in time. Crystal, would you have a different take on the importance of annual leave? It'd be interesting to hear what you feel.
What we have actually seen is that, yeah, a lot of people, even in our own company, right, people are not taking their annual leave because, like I said, they don't have anywhere to go. I don't have any travel plans. I'd rather just keep working and then save up for the next year or so. It is a question as whether, you know, what works for the organization. For example, we've seen some organizations go, hey, taking annual leave is good for your mental health and your physical well-being. Please take, you know, a certain number of days each month, or if you have a lot of accumulated annual leave, we would suggest that you probably take it, you know, before the end of the year. This will be really helpful for your own health and mental well-being. I would say it really comes to the line managers to actually promote that and not use it as, you know, it will be a cost to our organization, but more towards caring about the employee, worded that way, communicated that way through the line managers. It actually really helps. And also to tell them, hey, take a break, take one, you know, if you have too many leaves, just take 1 day a week. That doesn't hurt, you know, half a day, even then, also really helps with your own well-being. So I think this is to be communicated very well through the top management down, but not in terms, like I said, through cost management, but through really caring for them.
Lovely, lovely. Thank you, thank you. And a question perhaps for all three of you, and please put your hand up and indicate who'd like to go first. Here's a question. Something that concerns many organizations in Singapore right now is, with work from home, there's this question of monitoring employee productivity. How would you suggest to our listeners that they might want to deal with, for example, not only the end of year reviews, but also in terms of having difficult conversations when perhaps performance isn't what you think it should be? It's a complicated question. Who would like to tackle it first?
Perhaps
Nicole?
So like I mentioned, for my company, we work from home. Like, you know, we didn't think that it was going to happen for at least another year or two. However, we were forced to implement this back in March. And I was pleasantly surprised because I felt that, you know, at first as a business owner, that's your biggest concern. If your employees are working from home, are they going to be productive, or are they, going to be watching the television, or, like hanging out with their mom, like making cups of tea and so on and so forth. But within a few weeks, for the first few weeks, it was kind of like, people reporting almost on a daily basis to their managers, like, what have I done? Like the manager just really almost micromanaging what they were doing. But after a few weeks, we realized that actually a number of my colleagues were being a lot more productive. They were being a lot more creative. And they were coming up with, new solutions, new ways of doing things that worked for the work from home kind of situation. And so gradually, we were like, okay, I don't really care what you do with your time, how you do it, as long as it gets done. And, like I have heard of businesses where, everyone is kind of tuned in from 9 till 5 p.m. Everyone has their webcam on and, like the manager is there looking at everyone. We didn't do that. And I really don't think there's a need to do that, because I value my colleagues so much. And I'm so grateful that during this time, they've made this process so smooth by, like really putting in 100% effort.
Great, Nicole, thank you. Nicole, what you just said connects, I think, very directly with what Megan shared with us in the first presentation around trust. Megan, would you agree?
Look, absolutely. And it's so lovely to hear you actually reinforcing that story, Nicole, about what's really happening. And I think what's really interesting is that, did you actually really know what someone was doing 8-9 hours every day when you had them sitting in front of you? Because you couldn't see they were sitting in the telly, or you couldn't see what they were doing. You just kind of trusted that they were doing something. You could walk past them. And I think this has been the real big mind shift that I think will make the most long-term impact. It isn't about the physical location as such. It's about, I'm losing a little bit of control. I'm not comfortable that I can't just wander over and ask someone what they're doing. And that's, we're talking about generational behavior. It's been sort of almost since the first industrial revolution. That's what you did. You were able to do that. And I think that aspect of trust, and also what I think is really, really important is purpose. If you are messaging and really clear with your entire organization what the purpose of it is and what that individual's purpose is, you know what, it doesn't really matter if I work 4 hours today and 10 hours tomorrow and I get up on Saturday morning and I feel like doing some stuff. I'm trusted. And I understand how I contribute value to the organisation. And this is a real shift in mind. It's a real change in okay, what am I contributing to? What product am I making? How am I adding value to my peers? And I think it's a confronting thing, but I think it's a really valuable thing. And I'm kind of looking forward to it going forward.
Megan, thanks. Megan, you touched there on the intergenerational, different generations that we have in the workforce now. Do you sense any differences in approach that we ought to be aware of? This is a question coming up a little bit earlier on. Any differences between boomers, millennials, Gen Y, Gen X?
This is a really uncomfortable conversation for me, because to me, I hate the idea of categorizing someone so generally. I think we're individuals. We have incredible different backgrounds and filters and influences. Even just looking at the four of us here, we have different experiences and values, but I understand it helps people. We're going to tackle it this way with our Gen Z, and we're going to help our baby boomers in this way. But my caveat is, they're individuals, and if you show them that respect, it might be more complicated, but you're going to get better results. But sort of as a general rule, the reality is you are going to find the older generations and those who have maybe had less movement in their careers, so they've faced less change, they're really going to be generalizing. They're going to be facing more challenges, and that's that stuff that Crystal talked about, right? They're going to feel more stressed. They're going to potentially be more disengaged. They're going to be angry about a loss of control. All of these things are going to have negative implications. So when you're thinking about, I mean, we talk a lot about autonomy, and I work in the Industry 4.0 space. We're introducing a robot. Okay, well, let's just assume the millennials are going to get it and go forward, and let's assume the baby boomers are going to hate it. Not necessarily true, but you do certainly need to consider that someone who was born with this, when you can see it, born with this available to them their entire lives versus someone who's had to learn to use it, they're going to have that potential hesitation. And so, being cognizant of that, making sure that you are communicating to them, making sure that you are making them feel included, that you're not sort of just assuming, oh, the baby boomers aren't going to get this, don't bother teaching them. And of course, don't forget the poor old Gen Zs, the new generation.
Indeed.
Look, it's potential, and I find this quite fascinating, that a lot of those younger Gen Zs are creating their formative thoughts about the economy and the work environment in the world of the last 6 months. And that is quite depressing, really depressing. And so be aware that they are also facing challenges. They're the most highly impacted from losing their jobs. They probably feel quite threatened. Last in the door, first out to go is quite common. So show a lot of respect is the best that I can think of. Communicate openly, clearly, honestly, and be prepared to listen.
Good advice. Well, look, here's another issue that's coming up, brought up through the chat. As companies try in some ways to look at new products, the development of new product lines, maybe in fact trying to reinvent themselves in order to survive, what that implies, of course, is that employees are going to have to reskill and upskill, learn different things. And one of our questions here is, do you guys have any thoughts on what could be the best communication practices for leaders to share these messages with the staff? What kind of tone and method perhaps might we need to adopt? Perhaps we have Nicole try that question. Then Crystal, perhaps you could chip in as well. So we're talking here about how do we prepare the employee to understand that they may need to upskill or reskill. Nicole.
It's a tricky one because the average age in my company is about people in their late 40s. So it is, like some of them have been in the pest control industry for 10, 15 years. And now with all this new technology and treatment methods out there, they're like, oh, but why should I learn it if, what I've been doing for the last 15 years has been working? I think they need to understand that it's not just a benefit for them to be upskilled. It's not just a benefit to the company, but it's for their own well-being. Because, if they can see that the benefits for them, that might mean, okay, maybe, you're more likely to get a promotion, or you can be in charge of a bigger team, or, like if you're able to do certain things, if you have certain skill sets, you can earn more money. Like, I think that's kind of how it needs to be packaged, that there is something for them and that it benefits them, not just the company.
Nice. Thanks very much. Crystal, any thoughts in that connection as well?
I think communication to the employees it's very tricky, right? The way we communicate things, or the way we have to tell someone to do something. But I see that the best way sometimes to actually communicate what you need the employee to do, or they should be doing is actually what I call like a sandwich communication. Like you always tell them, like even with parents and children, before you want someone or your spouse to do something, you always say the nice thing first, like, hey, you know, you've been doing really well in something. Your strengths are in these areas. I really appreciate that, you know, you have all these potential. You have done so much great work for the company. But here are some things that maybe, hey, let's just think about, and maybe it's great to reskill on this, or maybe join something to upskill on this area, because it will be not beneficial, is not to me or to the company, but more beneficial to you in your career progression or as a person or well-being, like Nicole said, as a whole. So you put it in or word it that way, it gives that employee that empowerment to actually want to do it themselves. And also gives them that, you as an employee gives them the trust to like, hey, I trust that you want to do it for yourself, and you be doing it not for the company, or, you know, maybe partly for the company, but mainly just for yourself moving forward, because people take responsibility mainly for themselves. And then people like that, you know, like what Megan's saying, the trust, right? That the employer gives to the employees to make their own choices, to make their own goals. Because having like someone to just keep watching over you, even as you know, when you're a child, if your parents keep doing that, the more you want to do something wrong, or the more you want to do something different. So you want to have that trust and that empowerment given to an individual, because they're all adults, they're not kids anymore. They want to feel like they have that control. They want to feel that, you know, this is my work, this is my career, and I want to be responsible for this, and I want to be in control of this. That gives you, an employer, that opportunity to actually help the employee to become better, upskill, reskill, and also do what you think that you need them to do. That's how I probably feel in that way.
Thanks, Crystal. Thank you.
And
Megan,
Michael,
you want to chip in? Yeah, go ahead.
So I do a course leading your team through change. It's very, very practical and activity based. And a couple of the things that I always say is prepare, because we often have a piece of information or we're given a message and we just go running in with what's there. Spend 10 minutes, sit down and think about what is the best way to communicate this. You know, email might not be the right way to go. Who's the best person to communicate it? Did you know that you are 9 times more likely to accept and understand a message from your direct manager than you are from someone else? And that's a really important message, because often, you know, direct leaders and supervisors, they're uncomfortable with that stuff. When you say to them, you have the direct respect. When you message something, you know how it's going to impact that employee. When the CEO gives a message, I want to hear about strategy. I want to hear about big ticket items. But when it comes to what impacts me, CEO doesn't know what I do, and that's great. I like it that way. But I want to hear it directly from my manager, and that's kind of an important message we need to get across. And the other thing is, think about what resistance they're going to give you. So, you know, I've had a look at the question that's detailed. You need to message reskilling. So think about what they're going to say. I'm too old. I don't want to do it. I've done it like this always before. Why do we have to change? Who said it's better? We tried it last week and it didn't work. Think about what they're going to say to you. Don't be prepared to defend your position, but think about what might be a response to them, and very much that focus that Nicole said. I love the with them. What's in it for me? If you can focus on that, I know it's sort of, it sounds a bit like, oh, wow, could we just not do our job, what we're paid for? But we're humans and we need to feel wanted and respected and valued. So just a couple of tips.
Absolutely. In fact, one of the big things that I'm hearing from all three of you in different ways, but coming at it, I think, into one central theme, is this question of empathy and the importance of being able to put yourself in the shoes of somebody else and to have an appreciation or a perspective on how they see something. And we'll perhaps come back to that in just a short while. I really do want to ask Crystal a question, and this is about the move from traditional to digital consultation, especially medical consultation. And I noticed you mentioned about the use of apps so that you can get to see somebody pretty quickly. Classes, yoga classes, some great things there. telemedicine as well makes complete sense, I think, at this time. All of these things are great. Do you have some reassurance to give us around patient confidentiality?
Yes. So that's a good question, Michael. I mean, that's a concern of a lot of people, especially the employees, like, oh, HR implemented this into the benefits, right? How would I know that HR is not going to get information that I called in, or I just spoke to a counselor, or I just consulted a doctor on something? So what we usually do is we always, do an employee communication session whenever a vendor's been in place, let them know that whatever the vendor does is separate from what HR has. We all follow PDPA rules. Like there's, all these personal data is not going to be shared with them. The HR is all signed with confidentiality agreements, especially with counseling. The whole stigma on what if my manager finds out. I've been asking for help in terms of being overwhelmed at work. I don't want them to know that, that I'm not doing well, or I can't handle my job and I might get fired. So I think that's a lot of good concerns there, especially in Asia when the stigma on counseling is still very, very much there. People don't want to air their dirty laundry out to external, counselors or a third party. We've seen the increased uptake of counseling sessions during COVID, during the pandemic, because people were locked down. They don't know who to speak to. And they're like, you know what? We've heard a lot of, help, get people getting help seeking counseling. Why not try it? So there have been people, taking up counseling sessions. They tried it and they realized, hey, it's not so bad. It's not like where I have to be crazy and then I see a counselor or a psychologist. It's actually just, seeking a third party person, another person to help you see a different point of view or change your perspective on a certain way of thinking. And that makes the stigma a lot less right now, knowing that, hey, it's just someone to listen to, someone to give you support, someone to give you strategies for life. And then that helps. I always tell clients whenever we start anything new in terms of counseling and telemedicine, we do a calm session with them and we explain this is how it works. This is how the whole thing is very transparent. No data will be shared with your employer, no data will be shared with your line manager. We guarantee that. We only seek your consent if, say, that data needs to be shared. We will have to come back to you for your consent. So then that gives a lot of people assurances to know that this is just a benefit that HR has given out to employees to help you with your well-being, but it's not to look out and look at you, but it's just to help you and support you during this time. So with that constant communication going on throughout the year or throughout each quarter helps actually mitigate that stigma or mitigate that fear of having their data being made known.
Thanks, Crystal. That's really reassuring. I'd like to come to Megan just for a moment, continuing with this theme of AI and EI. You referred to emotional intelligence, EQ. Do you think that artificial intelligence, let's say within the HR context, will actually free HR people up to be able to spend more time with people and to be able to have what we might call more quality conversations with human beings? So how do you see it panning out in the future, Megan?
I'm not sure that's what the organisation wants from their HR people. It's certainly not what they want today. I'm realising how cynical that sounds. Sorry to all of the HR people on here. I don't see that as what they want the HR people to do. But I do agree that the introduction of new technology, whether it's AI, whether it's machine learning, whether it's taking away those kind of repetitive tasks from any department, the idea being what that frees people up to do, of course, is the more creative stuff, the more innovative stuff, the more personal stuff. And so, yes, your HR team, your finance team, any team that is able to then use the information that they're getting from this technology to make better decisions, to understand what's going on with the humans in the organisation, and ultimately to have those conversations if that's what we want, that's what that's the strategy the organisation has, then yeah, absolutely. And you know, you can reference, it doesn't have to be HR. You can go into any area and say, if we're not doing mass data entry, or we're not number crunching, or we're not doing those sorts of tasks, then it is going to free us up for that creative, innovative stuff, which is great. It's fantastic, and that's what we want to see from automation, right? That's the point.
Indeedy. And building on that, and another really nice question here, you mentioned about onboarding and digital onboarding as well of people. Do you feel that there's a sense to, in retrospect, that we might need to perhaps fix or improve the experience of some of the question here is the Gen Zers who onboarded during COVID, because this is their very first job, if you like. They haven't had a job before that, and this is the first time that they've actually started a real job. Any thoughts on that? And Nicole, you mentioned you know, demographically the folks in your company perhaps a little bit older, but I guess you have young people coming in too. So perhaps a quick comment, Megan, and then to Nicole.
All I can tell you is that I started my new job March. So I was very rapidly moved from onboarding into a permanent work from home situation. And I've had a lot of years and a lot of jobs, and I found it confronting. I didn't have those bonds. I wasn't able to create those relationships and network, especially that network, that I would have ordinarily in a new organisation. And I have had to work really hard to adjust to that. These kids don't have that experience, right? They don't necessarily know how important it is to create that network in an organisation, that things get done at the water cooler and making coffee, and the chit chat before a meeting starts is often where decisions get made and ideas get sparked. And you know, you might get new exciting work. I mean, how many times have we all sat in a meeting and someone's mentioned something and you've said, wow, I'd be really interested in that project, and suddenly a fantastic opportunity has come up. All of that has been taken away. So I do think there needs to be a bit of a fix. I do think that once we're back in the office, even for any period of time, you're going to need to go back and redo those physical introductions, so that it isn't awkward for them when they see you in the lunchroom, that they can approach you, because although they've been introduced as a face on a screen, they didn't get to see you and understand what you do. So I absolutely think for anyone in HR and anyone who's done any onboarding, I think you need to go back and take a look. And then we need to think about the future. If work from home is going to be the new normal, and we're all going to up and relocate to a beach on Bali, and maybe this is the way it's going to be, yeah, I think onboarding needs a lot of focus, a lot of priorities.
Megan, thanks for that. I think that will be very helpful to the person who asked that particular question. Thank you very much. Nicole, what do you think about this question of onboarding?
So I'm dealing with two sets of colleagues. One set are those people that work from the office, and then the second set are my pest management professionals that are out there on the field. So for the latter group, nothing much has changed, because they're still, we're still taking them in, they're still out and about carrying out the pest management works. However, for the office, we have had a few people join us since the circuit breaker was lifted. And because we're kind of like, we are kind of back to working from the office in shifts, they've still had that human touch. So they've still been able to meet their colleagues, like perhaps in the first week, maybe they came in a few more times, and then thereafter, I think they were able to work more confidently and comfortably from home. But I can only imagine that when they, if they had joined first, via a video, we did all the interviews via Zoom, Teams. So that was already quite tricky. I can just imagine that, if they hadn't been able to meet their colleagues, I think there's definitely work that we can do in our onboarding process.
Lovely, lovely. I think some great advice there from everyone. What I'd quite like to do is, I'm aware that we're sort of getting towards the end of the session now, but I wanted to invite each of you to perhaps share one sort of golden nugget of advice with our audience in light of that overarching question that we had, which was around getting ready for work in the next future. If there was one piece of advice that you'd want everybody to be able to take from this session and to perhaps embrace and use in the workplace, what might that one piece of advice be? And I'll leave it to you guys to decide who goes first.
I'll go.
Megan, thank you. Okay.
Empathy. If there is one thing that I think is going to make all the difference in people having difficulty, facing their personal stresses, going back to the office, not going back to the office, whatever the situation is for us as incredibly complex individuals, if you take a moment and show some empathy, you know, I guarantee you things will be better, and that's kind of the best position that I can think of.
Super, super. Well, something nice to reflect on there. Empathy, terrific. Thank you, thank you. Who'd like to go next? Nicole, I think you. Yeah.
I guess for me it would have to be communication, because you can, you know, even when you can never assume. You should never assume something. And secondly, you know, like when we are interacting face to face, you know, there are small mannerisms or things, you know, that can be conveyed. Whereas if you're doing it over a screen, you know, a comment that you may make as a joke, someone could actually think that you're just being mean and disrespectful. So I think you have to be quite, you know, you shouldn't assume that everyone is going to like just understand and know what you're saying or communicating.
Super, super, thank you. So communication. So we've got empathy and we've got communication. Crystal, what would you add to the mix?
I would say support, you know, being there for your employees, hearing what they have to say, like employee listening. You know, having an open mind to what each individual needs, because everyone's different, every team member is different. And you know, being there for them and trying to do the best that you can to make everyone, you know, have a really great work culture going on in the organization.
Lovely,
That's what
lovely, lovely, lovely. Thank you, Crystal. So I've got here empathy, communication, and then support. So I think if we have those three things going forward, we're pretty well prepared and armed, I think, for the future and whatever COVID-19 has to throw at us in the months to come. I'm going to add a couple more in just because I can, because I'm in charge of this this moderating panel, and one of them, I'm actually stealing your ideas actually, and that would be trust as well. So I think trust would be another big one that we would add into the mix. And just because I like it very much, Nicole, you mentioned it in your presentation. That is compassion. I think empathy is great. Compassion is in my opinion even more dynamic, because we can empathize with people doesn't necessarily mean we're going to do anything to help them, whereas compassion has that very active component in it, which I think is very exciting. So those would be my two additions into the mix. I think empathy, communication, and support are some very good things that we have. So I'm going to be handing back to Kerry in just a while I get my instructions from her. If you guys are okay, I have just one or two quick questions to get in under the wire, which is from one or two participants. Is that okay with you if I just ask a couple of quick questions?
Sure.
Okay, so someone's making the point that in every organization, there's always going to be a small percentage of employees who simply cannot accept change. So whether it's, you know, new tech, job redesign, any kind of upgrading. They want to stay with the status quo. How would we try to relate to those people, and how could we try to change their mind? Can we change their mind? Any thoughts on that? Megan, you're nodding your head there. It sounds like you might have come across some people who are falling into that category.
Well, I mean, because we do organisational change management courses and I run them, and I always say the same thing. As long as you reach a tipping point, there's the 80-20 rule. How much effort do you continue to put into someone who simply does not want to change? I've got a 22-year-old daughter, and I'm constantly saying to her, you cannot change other people. Only you can change. And so I think we need to take a moment and actually think that. So while all the books will tell you ways, and we can use empathy and we can use compassion and we can use communications to change someone, I think all managers and supervisors need to have a moment and say, there are some people that want to be unhappy about this change. They want to complain about it. But if you've got the majority on board, and even if the person is begrudgingly doing what they're supposed to be doing and grumbling about it, as long as they're not impacting other people, which is a behavioural issue, right?
Right.
So if they've got a bit of a prisoner attitude and they are, causing grief to other people, then you need to deal with that as an HR issue. But quite frankly, if they're just like, oh, I don't like it, we're all grown-ups, we're all paid to do a job, and sometimes we have to do things we don't like. So I'm a bit of a tough love advocate.
Yes.
Say, Michael.
Well, you and me both there, actually, because in fact, sometimes the most compassionate thing to do is actually to exit someone.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to be aware of that. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Nicole, any thoughts on this same subject? I think you're on mute. Yeah.
I fully agree with Megan. There are some people that, you can try everything, but it's just, they're very set. They've got, their fixed mindsets, and nothing that you can do is change. So you can either work with that, or perhaps they're just not the right corporate fit for the organization.
Yeah. And yeah, it's better for all concerned that we part company, I guess. Crystal, any thoughts from your side?
I fully agree with Megan too. Before, coming to the corporate consulting world, I was doing counseling, and there are some people who just won't change. And I can't push someone to change, because if they come to me and they don't want to change, there's nothing I can do, right? So the world still needs to go. It keeps running. We can't wait for everyone who doesn't need to change or doesn't want to change. So I think, we have to move forward and we have to move on.
I think so too. Very good. Well, I've got just a couple of last minute questions, and I'd like to put one to Nicole here. Now, this might be a question that you might have anticipated, but I have to ask it, and that is, how do you think that we can attract more Singaporeans into pest management?
It's okay. I think there has to be a fundamental change in the perception of the industry. Right now, unfortunately, pest management is seen, as a very, people think that oh, I'm just, like a construction worker going around doing like a very so-called dirty job. However, there's so much more to this profession. Our professionals need to have knowledge of biology, of chemistry. They need to be able to solve problems. Nowadays, they're operating more and more technology. So, but that perception is still, that it's like, oh, I'm just like, all I just have to do is like go to a construction site and spray. So I think that's something that we really need to work on. And I've been advocating for years. It needs to be like, kids in school should grow up saying things like, oh, I want to be a pest management professional, not just, being a doctor or a lawyer or a policeman. it needs to, like we need to start young, like educating people about the importance of this. In some countries, for example, in the US, in Europe, Australia, pest management professionals are treated as such, as professionals on par with, engineers and other technical experts. So I just wish that, like the same approach would be taken here in Singapore.
Lovely, lovely, great. And,
can I just say, Michael,
yes,
I didn't
yes.
mention this in our pre-interview, but can I tell you, Nicole, my daughter works for a pest company in Australia, and I'm quite proud of that.
Oh, really?
Oh, fantastic.
Okay.
Fantastic, fantastic. And another thing, if I could build on that too, Nicole, I don't think you need any comforting here, but I've also worked with people in pest control, and you know, they have amongst the strongest corporate cultures that I have ever come across in terms of really feeling that they're making a difference. So I think it's a great industry to be in. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate the support.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Well, look, it looks like we have just about got to the end of our time together. So I'm going to start winding up our panel discussion and handing back to Kerry in just a moment. But before I do, I'd like to thank all three of you most sincerely for the hard work in putting together some really interesting presentations, sharing your wisdom with us. It's been a lot of fun. So Nicole, Megan, Crystal, thank you very much indeed. And with that, I will hand back to Kerry. Kerry, it's over to you.
Thank you, Michael. That was a fantastic panel discussion on empathy, support, communication, trust, and compassion indeed. So once again, a big thank you to Michael, Megan, Crystal, and Nicole for your insightful analysis and valuable sharing. We hope that everyone has been inspired and gained new knowledge for the next future. So before we end the session, a quick announcement that SMEICC is offering a special discount for new member signups before 21st September 2020. So give us a call or drop us an email if you're interested. Also, please let us know your comments on SMEICC Live through the feedback survey. You can scan the QR code on your screen now or follow the redirect link after you have closed the session. Your feedback is valuable so that we can improve your experience for the next event. We have more exciting tracks and expert speakers lined up for you. Please join us for the upcoming tracks tomorrow or scan the QR code to view the full program. So once again, thank you very much, everyone. Have a great evening and stay safe. Thank you.